what is the future for Ion? What do you got planned for the next 25 years? You've been doing some heavy lifting, getting us to where
Yeah,
you are today,
yeah,
2025. Where are you going to be in the future?
yeah. Well, that's what your podcast is supposed to uncover.
That's why we build up to boom. You're gonna give us some big vision, some big wisdom of the next
Yeah,
decade.
yeah. Well, I think when it comes to viewing is one thing. First of all, one of the reasons, everything is also best when it comes to being purpose driven, right? And you can say it's call to action. Well, what do you want me to do after I see this or after I click on this, whatever? And besides on the business side of this, we can't project out to 25 years because 25 years, that's a century now, right?
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Lejeune-Kopp, and on this podcast, we talk about challenges and wins in business. See the vision, drive the future. All right, welcome to episode 57 of the Future Driven podcast. I'm here with Dave Behar from Ion, founder and CEO, or otherwise known as the Chief Executive Athlete. Dave, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we just did a little pre-intro, talking through everything, and I wanted to cut us off so we didn't get too far into some of the good stuff.
Ah,
And I know we did not cover this off, Dave, but I like to talk a little bit about your background, what you're doing now, and then what you got going
mhm.
on in the
Yeah,
future. It sounds like you've got lots of things going on. So
yeah.
before we talk about Ion, unless that's been kind of your everything, what was your career like? The last few years before you
Century.
really got into what you're doing today. I said few just to be a little friendly.
Well, quite frankly, it's all about brand building, components, ingredients, or as we say, I ingredients, and love building brands. So kind of that focus is, and the building the brands is more about internal brands that we invest in and produce, and some have been exited as part of the portfolio, um, primarily in sports, health, nutrition, so CPG type stuff, then creating the media around it, which then folds into our network. And of course, it extends further as a result of the Ion network, Ion Kids, Ion Family, besides the Ion Health, Ion Sports. We love sports. I know you have a sports background, and
I
it'd be great
do.
to talk about that a little bit
Well,
more.
when did you start Ion? When did that officially kick off?
Yeah, so the network originated back in about the 2000, the turn of the century,
Okay.
and that was when we started buying assets. There was some domain acquisitions, and if you recall, that was a time that the pipes weren't that wide for there to be what we know now to be streaming and
Sure.
kind of taking over some of the other types of distribution. So we, at that point, were heavy in e-commerce search because people loved our brands. And then there was certainly building blocks prior to that point, that led to the comprehensive vision. But we're excited to be playing it out, and it's fun, lots of fun.
So you mentioned CPG and direct to consumer. So are you primarily B2C and direct to consumer products that you're focusing on?
That's a great question because it's this big world out there. We can be also suggestive that everybody's a network,
Yep.
and brands today, they need to speak personally, as you know. Whether you are including much on the personal branding side or not, but we do both. Our platform on the Ion side is not by chance, but moving into the direction of the user generated content. I mean, that there's millions of great content creators. Some have even
Yep.
great shows and such, and they are positioned well, or they need positioning. And so we're the network to do that. We love working with agencies, love working with the creators directly, and some of the tools to help them get further is baked in and scaling in our network today. So, versus it being a little bit more static, if you will. And we do have a production and distribution business, of course, because it is about the eyeballs, but the right eyeballs, which kind of points to what your question was about, kind of consumer versus business, the B2B, B2C kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, it's really all of the above, and
Okay.
it's what is that target? Is it hyper targeted, hyper local, and what is that message that that particular brand needs to send? And we love dealing with professionals like you who bring in it and have the solutions for your clients.
So break it down a little bit more in simple terms for me. What exactly is Ion and how does it interact with the end user? How do you help brands? How do you help end users? You
Sure.
talk about it being a network. Is it its own network? Do you sit on top of a network? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we are more or less a domain based network. We
Okay.
distribute over the internet and mobile and OTT, which includes Apple, Android, Roku.
Yep.
But our own network, again, you're sitting in Seattle, Adam, and Ion Seattle is the local channel besides what is hyperlocal channels even further than Seattle because of all the suburbs. And so if you look at it from our model standpoint, I'm not suggesting where we're giving too much away here, but we reach inside communities at the resident and business level. And the database is the marketplace. So it's not just that macro market in yesteryear of calling markets DMAs and stuff like that. This is there's 25,000 plus, in fact, more or less 28,000 towns in North America, really in the United States. And so we serve those markets. And we do that also categorically and furthermore with what is an upload. So the network of champions is we do have our own production capability, which really helps people understand what our reach is, and then also when it comes to a producer, a network perhaps that has rights to events and leagues, and we love leagues, so those are all bolted on to the network, and then we certainly deliver distribution.
Now, are you focusing on live content, docu series, pre production stuff? Kind of what's the main source of content?
Yeah, you know how things have changed considerably, and we can kind of point to social networks in how
Yeah.
you know the different reels, et cetera, are uploaded and distributed that way. In our case, we have our own long form and short form. Mostly, the long form is by third parties and licensed. In
Yep.
fact, our Ion Kids is licensing a number of animated series that has those. We just aren't in that production business. We sure can distribute it and reach that younger audience, if you will. But we're talking about the distribution being focused with the domain based channels and at ions.com. And the docu-series side, it's really more from the OTT side, but it's the positioning is we just go where the people already are, and we're able to carry at the different platforms any length of series. And I think some of the decision making, this gets in the weeds a little bit about, gosh, not what is a docu series and what is the genre or category, but we are categorizing. Again, this is about a people of the people for the people approach versus only showing what we want to show, and that is where the evolving aspect of Ion really is. And so we'll help wherever we can to help that content creators succeed, and let alone the brand. But from a brand standpoint, while it's somewhat in my background of building great brands from scratch and plugging in to help exit and those kinds of things, we prefer to deal with those brand owners and agencies that are bringing it already and looking for those solutions, and we're happy to be part of that solution, if not lead. And distribution is part of that, of course.
Yeah, that's great. So, with Ion being around for the better part of 25 years, what has been your biggest challenge as technology has evolved and things have been moving in at such a fast pace over that time? What do you deem as one of your biggest or a few challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, technology moving fast would be one.
Yeah,
It's also, pardon the term, but ambition always meeting reality,
right.
because of those models that have occurred over the course of time, and then the attention span, often not just by great founders, but by venture capital, public monies. We're not going to call it bootstrap by any means, but we've avoided that approach in order to make sure that we can maintain authenticity in those markets that we reach, which are more and more plentiful. But the things that we've had to overcome, quite frankly, and I don't mind speaking for myself, and that's things like infringement, things like confusion with who we are. We've been distracted. So distraction, which is not one of my favorite iron words, it's so we've had to pursue some bad guys that have ripped off our intellectual property and theft, and we've taken a few to court, and that's a distraction. Whether it's we have our great attorneys or I've had to spend time on that side, because the evolution, as you know, of platforms, let alone internet versus TV, and it obviously, the old word was convergence, right? So we've had to defend ourselves as a plaintiff, in not just who we are, but where we are, and the great brand that we created, and being the original Ion.
So I want to pivot a little bit and ask about OTT a little bit, and that's over the top, right, is the
Yep.
acronym,
Yeah.
which I still don't understand why it's called over the top, but maybe you got some insight on
Yeah, it's kind
that.
of over the top of the box.
Oh, so just literally over the top of the box.
I
Um,
think it could. I think OTT could have a brand overhaul.
yeah, and I think someone came up with it. It stuck and
Yeah,
never
right.
never adjusted.
Here's
But
your chance, Adam.
yeah, so OTT, I find is obviously it's combating against cable. It's
Yeah,
a whole new experience, but it's not quite mobile. But
yeah,
as I've done a few campaigns on OTT and with advertisers trying to figure out how to engage with uh, uh, try to it. I guess what I'm trying to get at is like it feels like you can measure the investment there, but you still need people to take action, which is then that's where you try to engage. And how do you merge the phone? And it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's OTT or TV or on a roller coaster. It feels like people have phones in their hands, and so it's connecting that experience back to that so that you can collect data, so you can get them to take action.
yes. Well, don't forget that it's most known for viewing on your proverbial TV set or smart TV.
Yeah, that's what I guess I was saying. Like
Yeah.
it is on your
So,
smart TV, but then sure,
so yeah, and then part of it is kind of goes on and on about the distribution method when you're talking about mobile.
yeah,
It's mobile. It's almost that reduced internet, it reduced size related to the internet, and even the shape of the screen, horizontal or vertical. But OTT, I mean, when you say docuseries, it's a great home. I mean, look what's occurred with some of the late great brands, Netflix and Amazon Prime, and some of those groups that have succeeded famously. So, in our case, we certainly offer a different product. The call to action, kind of like you were referring to, um, that's all about what you're really trying to call to action, because there's a
yeah,
lot of things to consider there between a brand, like an execution on a brand's integration in the content or something, or it's branded content besides simply continue to build your reputation for having just great viewing and great content, if you will, great shows. So we like the idea of great shows, and we want to champion that as a network.
So you're in the sports world, you're in the network world. Is the holy grail must be live sports? I mean, that must be the thing that everybody's going after, and what it captures the most
Yeah,
attention.
I would argue that, Adam, a little bit. I know that there would be plenty of opinions, but don't forget that live sports is still like appointment. You have to set the appointment, even though it can be recorded,
Yep.
and therefore it's like, well, is it live or is it taped or delayed or whatever you want to call
Yep.
it? So live sports and just sports contests in general, it's a great business, great market, especially when you're good at aligning the right brands with those shows, with those events, those games, et cetera, that people want to watch. I mean, I can get into what are, part of what we do in that space. It's pretty fascinating, but at the same time, um, you know, there's also those folks that don't really care about live. They just care about great shows, great content, even, individuals that bring it in a more of a podcast talk show type format, has high viewership, that's not having, team playing team or athlete playing athlete type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, sports rights, it's definitely part of our business, built from scratch, some, and also we also enjoy things like media credentialing and stuff like that to be certainly engaged with pro sports and college sports when we don't have rights. So
Now, in the sports world, there's obviously the big major leagues, big five, if you will, but then
yeah,
there's a whole slew of other sports and leagues and other things that attracts a lot of people, from
yeah,
darts to cornhole to rugby to martial arts, whatever it is.
yeah,
And are you seeing a lot of opportunity? Major League Cricket is coming to North
that's
America,
right.
and
So
there's all.
you know how big cricket is.
Yeah,
It's
cricket's huge, right?
massive.
It's a
Yeah.
volume game, right? And
Yep.
if I think about the if I think about the emerging sports and the uniqueness of them, and people really thrive on some of these unique leagues and things. I mean, axe throwing had a moment there for a couple of years that were really
Yeah. Well, axe throwing, we're doing axe throwing next weekend on
yeah.
Ion.
It's still hot, maybe so.
Well, you got to remember there. Just think about the word affinity, right? And no sports have really gone away. It's just kind of how they've been presented,
Yeah,
and that is probably where the pros and cons are. The challenges, even at the professional sports level, including media rights, with how they're viewed and where they're viewed, and but love emerging sports, love the entrepreneurism, the ambition, and maybe those folks that are producing those sports don't have what is an equal balance of, again, like the marketing and the brand positioning, and for that matter, brand partnering. So we love this space, and it's nothing like it's a I don't know, the word is flavor of the day, or whatever. I've been in it my entire career, and drove some of those things as a brand versus, let's say, a network. So it's exciting, and some of those that you mentioned, yeah, some of them are a little bit of a surprise, but again, we're talking about people's affinity, um, whether it be thousands of athletes or millions of athletes.
yeah.
Fans, maybe a little different story, like who watches certain things, but that's also where great marketing comes into play, and getting things introduced or at least made aware that they are out there and viewable. And, whether it be the blend of great commentating and brand engagement and some colorful characters that are on the athlete side, it's all positive, right?
So we've been talking a lot about the content and that focus. How does that blend with the brands and the advertisers? How does that enter Ion space? And how is there a call to action you're looking for people to understand how they can get involved in advertising on Ion?
Yeah, so our model, we hesitate in, let's say, calling it advertising because it's much more of integrated marketing and advertising, and the display of, you can call it ads, do play a role, but they might be much more integrated in a live type event scenario, on location activation, et cetera. And therefore, that's where the brands are seen,
Yep.
incorporated, interviews, things like even red carpets and stuff like that. But we just again enjoy the space, and we want to serve the space as we have now.
That's great. So, what is the future for Ion? What do you got planned for the next 25 years? You've been doing some heavy lifting, getting us to where
Yeah,
you are today.
yeah,
2025. Where are you going to be in the future?
yeah. Well, that's what your podcast is supposed to uncover, right?
That's why
Uh,
we build up to boom. You're gonna give us some big vision, some big wisdom of the next
yeah.
decade.
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to viewing is one thing. First of all, one of the reasons, everything is also best when it comes to being purpose driven, right? And you can say it's call to action. Well, what do you want me to do after I see this or after I click on this, whatever? And besides on the business side of this, we can't project out to 25 years because 25 years, that's a century now, right? So I definitely see much more virtual reality and hologramic activity, but just far better viewing experience and experiential type of things. And certainly how you're viewing them, and even on the wearable side, et cetera. So the 25 years is a stretch. I know you're sort of kind of joking, but
Yeah.
um, we're just going to continuously improve. And I like saying, working to be the best. What else is there? Great collaboration. We certainly see ourselves as a growing leading network, and increasingly better run, and so forth. And certainly being able to not necessarily pivot, although to adopt those things like technologies that are innovative, besides doing some of our own innovation. Um, but it kind of goes on and on because it's we want to continue to lead and have a differentiation, which I think is super important when you're talking about just building a great brand, from a million to a billion and beyond. So I like to think a little bit more in terms of 3 to 5 year increments. And we, just like some cultures, they plan in 50 year increments and centuries type of thing.
Yeah.
We would love to end up on top, and be really the best we can be, and be certainly serving a far bigger audience. So, and
So
we're getting,
everybody can find you at iontelevision.com.
what's that?
Your main domain is iontelevision.com, right?
Actually, it's ions.com, and
Ions.com.
there's an evolution there. Ion Television, that is who we sued in federal court for
Oh,
infringing on our intellectual property.
just like you.
That's right. So that's one of the bad guys, and but we coexist, and that's only by the nature of there being a settlement after we sued them. But that went to trial.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's
sorry to bring that up, Dave.
no, it's all good, Adam, because it is part of. I don't want to call it our DNA. Um, it's a type of situation that it's really a shame because our authentic self is finally who wins, and that's what we're here for. But yeah, you're talking about identity theft, basically.
Well, I'm on ions.com right now, and I am really interested to learn more about the National Pizza League.
That's right. Hey,
What
Adam, there's
what
there's
that's all
some
about.
There's some great pizza in Seattle, and you know that.
The National Pizza League.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it's one of those things. I'm not going to say we're gamifying pizza, but that space, there's big competition. There's millions of pizzas not only
The
produced, but
National Pizza Championships.
yeah. So there's some amazing pizziolas out there, and the amount of pizzerias that, have some level of territorial rights and rivalries and all that stuff. So that's all happening. There's amazing storytelling, and that's part of our populating of our network and the socialization for that matter. But um, it's good stuff. It's
So how
exciting.
much? So I used to work with
The NPL on Ion,
the what there again?
the NPL on Ion.
That's right. That's right. So I did a brief stint about a year and a half, 2 years. I was general manager of the rugby network,
Uh huh.
and
Yeah.
owned by Major League Rugby. And we produced. We didn't really produce. We distributed a lot of live rugby content,
Yeah.
and acquired the rights. And rugby in the U.S. Still very much at the youth and the adult level, amateur sport. So trying to
Sure.
elevate the exposure. So, and it was always an ongoing conversation about how much content we put on social to
Yeah.
then drive them to the network to consume it versus not putting enough on social so that people don't know where it is. So,
Yeah.
how do you find that balance? Because that's got to be a delicate balance.
That's right. It is. And first of all, I will say, when you're a growing league, you need to monetize it. Besides carrying out those brand and marketing, needs.
Yeah.
And where content goes, you want to make sure. I'm not necessarily giving you advice here, but just to your kind of question, first of all, you're going where the people already are. And where the people already are aren't necessarily on what is known as over the air television. It's in the social environments and those platforms. And if you are so lucky to have a social platform yourself, let alone what is you call it video sharing, et cetera, um, that has the ability to have a lot of followers and authentically, that's the place to go. So in our case, we have both, and we've spent more time within our current network and our capabilities than putting stuff out to other social networks, even though that is without a question growing. I mean, of course, that's where many folks, whether you want to call it sports or any other genre, any other category, have grown for sure and
Yeah.
have created what they've done. And I would say you need to have the social, of course, because that's where people already are and have already begun categorizing themselves besides, becoming their own network. So in our case, what's I think really important, especially for those brands and initiatives that we're marketing, let alone the leagues, to what is the origin of that property. So we want them to know that Ion is behind it, no matter where they're seeing it. And the best case is we are driving them to the right place. They just see more. And for that matter, engage in even things like merchandising and other opportunities related to those leagues and those shows and stuff. So, and we don't quite market like Ion Studios and being open for business with as if we're videographers and producers, even though we have a team, a great team. It's we want to empower them, and there are definitely today, as you know, there's millions. I'm kind of being facetious, but millions of
Yeah,
social media experts
for sure.
um, that if they're guiding where things are watched and engaged, engagement is critical. And okay, you have a chance. So, in our case, it's just uh, each execution, each league and initiative has its own set of guidelines, and the NPL, as an example, is done differently than the um, the PRL, the Pig Racing League.
Pig
So
racing. So
yeah,
I'm seeing, I mean, broom ball, bowling, bocce. I mean,
yeah,
it goes on and on.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so what is to kind of close things out a little bit? What
yeah.
are you most? And I'm going to kind of make you pick one. Maybe you can go two, but what's the one you're most excited about that maybe is unique, or is it the potential? Because Ion Chess, I mean, you got to work hard to really make that exciting, but there's a lot of people that like chess.
That's
So
right. So Adam, as much as I love what you're asking,
you're going to say it all.
no, I can say it all, but when you're talking about enabulation and enabling success, in this case, Ion Sports, and in sports, there's over 100 different sports, 150 really. And in kind of the seat I sit in, and I also like standing a lot and being active still.
Yep.
That's in and of itself five different sports. Just so I have my favorites that I like playing and still participating in, and with any luck winning. But this is for the people. So you mentioned like broom ball. Well, guess what? I mean, even the KFL, the night fighting league, you know, there are those that are super focused in that space, and we're KFL and Ion. So, and that's one of many sports, right?
Well,
So,
you cover a lot. Not only sports we've been talking about, but you got family, you got faith, you got crime, comedy, kids. There's a lot here at
yeah,
ions.com.
yeah,
So thanks so much, Dave, for coming on. I really appreciate
my
your
pleasure.
time today. I know
Let's
you
do it
got a lot
again.
to do. So yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and it was great meeting you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise. All right. See you next time, Adam.
All right, thank you.